Welcome back to Prescribing Possibility. I'm Dr. Dimna Weil, and I've been thinking a lot lately about what it means to stay human in a world that often feels like it's asking us to become hardened and desensitized. Lately, it feels like everywhere we turn, there's something demanding our emotional energy. There's political chaos, economic uncertainty, rising costs, healthcare systems stretched beyond their capacity, burnout in all different places, and it no longer feels like the exception, but like baseline. Grief that's both personal and collective, and just a constant stream of bad news that's delivered directly to any number of the devices we carry in our hands all days, right? So it can feel like the world is asking us to digest much more than we were ever designed to. And I think many people out there are asking the same question, like, how do I stay open hearted without becoming completely overwhelmed? How do I stay informed without becoming consumed? How do I continue to care deeply without emotionally collapsing underneath the weight of it all? I ask myself these things all the time. In other words, how do we stay human in a world that feels so very heavy? I think this is an important one to kind of dissect because many of us have developed two kind of default survival strategies. We either shut down, numb out, disconnect because it's too much, or we stay hyper engaged, constantly absorbing everything information, energy, the whole lot. And we're convinced that if we just pay enough attention, maybe somehow we can prevent pain or prevent suffering. But what I've come to learn is that neither one of them creates peace. And really that's what we all want, right? We want peace within ourselves, within our lives, within our families, communities, the world. One of these strategies creates disconnection and the other creates depletion. So somewhere in between those two extremes is a much harder, but much more honest practice. And that's staying present without going underwater and staying soft, but not falling apart, remaining compassionate without losing who we are. And I'd say, as a physician, I've seen firsthand what happens when people live in constant survival mode. I've lived it myself. Healthcare professionals know this intimately, and so do a lot of other caregivers. Teachers know this, parents know this. We become very skilled at functioning while we disconnect from ourselves. We just keep showing up, we keep performing, we keep taking care of everyone else. And somewhere along the way, we stop asking whether we ourselves are okay. We don't even consider it, right? And it's just not noticeable in medicine, although it is quite striking and that has repercussions for all of us. It's true in parenting, it's true in leadership, in entrepreneurship, just simply being a human right now in the world. And I think it's important to call out that there's a difference between resilience and emotional self abandonment. And I'm going to say that again because I think we confuse the two. There's a difference between resilience and emotional self abandonment. So, resilience is being present and staying there in the present with the difficulty and moving through it with integrity. Self abandonment, on the other hand, is pretending you're fine in order to continue what you're doing because everybody else needs something from you. One builds strength, the other leaves you exhausted. And I think part of why this has become more and more of an issue is because many of us were taught to call exhaustion strength. We praise and get praised for overfunctioning. We admire self sacrifice. We reward people for how much they can carry without complaining. We call people strong when what we often mean is that they've become very good at suppressing their own needs. And I'll say it again, suppression's not peace. Numbing does not give us healing. And disconnection is not resilience. So it leaves us wondering, what does it actually look like to stay human? And I think first, it's allowing ourselves to feel what's true, not performatively, not endlessly spiraling, but just honestly, like allowing that grief right now. There's fear or uncertainty, frustration, disappointment, anger, just pretending that these things don't exist doesn't help anybody. It just makes us less honest. Those feelings, they're still there. And emotional regulation in that way would be not, it's not never feeling upset. It's allowing those feelings to exist, but not letting them run the show. So it's not avoiding them. It's saying, yeah, this is hard. I feel scared. I'm overwhelmed. But then asking, like, okay, so what do I need most in this moment? And that question is really important, because when life is feeling heavy, our brains tend to go to these impossibilities, these questions that kind of can't be answered. Like, how do I fix it? How do I make sure nothing bad happens? How do I protect everyone I love? Those questions can create not only anxiety, but panic because they don't have real answers. And our brains are constantly looking for those real answers. So maybe a better question is like, what's mine to carry today? And that the answer to that question is going to be different for all of us. So maybe what's yours today is making that doctor's appointment you've been avoiding, or getting on the calendar, your mammogram or your colonoscopy. Maybe it's calling back your mom or your dad or your sibling. Maybe it's turning off the news for the evening because you genuinely just can't absorb one more headline. Maybe it's sitting with your teenager and just listening instead of trying to solve the problems. Staying human requires boundaries. And sometimes I know we can feel like boundaries sound selfish, um, especially to those of us who are used to being needed by others. But boundaries aren't selfish at all. It's how we protect our capacity to keep loving well. If every single breaking news alert, which there are many, many of them in a day, if they get immediate access to our nervous systems, our bodies will never return back to any kind of baseline. It's just constantly on high alert. And that's exhausting. If every person's emergency becomes your responsibility, you'll eventually just disappear within your own life. So boundaries, they're not about caring less. They're about learning how to consciously care and how to care sustainably. You can still be compassionate and say, I can't engage with this conversation right now. You can be informed about what's going on in the world and choose not to consume fear as a full time job. And you can love people and still disappoint them. I've become increasingly protective of what I allow into my body, into my space, into my world, not just food, but information, energy, urgency, emotional contagion. We talk a lot about physical health and not nearly enough about taking care of our mental health and our nervous systems. So I ask you to just take a moment and think about, who are you around? What are you consuming? What conversations leave you feeling depleted? What patterns keep pulling you into unnecessary chaos? Because your nervous system's always listening, and protecting it is not a weakness, it's wisdom. So I often return to my calm method here. Calm standing for compassion, awareness, listening, and mindfulness, because they're not abstract ideas, they are survival tools. Compassion asks, can I stop speaking to myself like I'm the enemy? Can I be kind to myself like I am to everyone else around me? Awareness asks, what's actually happening inside me right now? What am I actually feeling? Listening asks, what truth have I been avoiding? And mindfulness, it asks, can I come back to this moment instead of catastrophizing the next 10 years? Let me just stay here in this moment rather than taking it 10 steps beyond. So if you'd like to go deeper into this calm method, there is a link in the show notes that you can download a free guide that will help you use it in your life. Sometimes staying human looks very unassuming or unremarkable. Looks like heading outside for 5 minutes, getting a little sunshine, taking a look at nature before you go back into the house or the office. Maybe it's crying in your car instead of pretending you're unaffected. Sometimes it's saying no without writing and reciting a 12-page emotional apology. Whatever it looks like to you, taking a walk, going to therapy, canceling plans, asking for help, taking the nap, just it's ordinary care. And I think we can underestimate sometimes how powerful that ordinary care really is. We are often waiting for care or transformation to be dramatic, but most healing doesn't happen that way. It's much more subtle. So, in choosing again and again not to abandon yourself, I think staying human means protecting that tenderness that we have. And tenderness feels risky in a hard world. But hardness isn't the same thing as wisdom. And I don't want to be somebody who's so armored by disappointment that I can't feel joy anymore. And I don't want to confuse bitterness with intelligence. Softness isn't being fragile. Compassion's not weak. Um, it takes real courage to remain open-hearted in a world that often rewards disconnection, and especially now, especially when certainty seems impossible. And staying human means remembering that we all belong to each other. We all have some responsibility, not just to ourselves, but to how we interact with one another. Community, friendship, eye contact, sharing space, they all matter. Asking somebody, how are you? Really? And waiting for the answer, listening matters. Letting other people show up for you when you need that most, that matters too. So if the world is feeling heavy right now, I want to offer you this. You don't need to carry it all alone, and you don't need to carry all of it at once. You don't have to be endlessly available to prove that you care. You're allowed to be fully human. And so I ask you to consider this one question. What helps you return to yourself? Not escape, return. come back. Maybe it's silence or a prayer, a walk, listening to a song. Whatever it is, protect it. Protect it. Thanks for being here with me today and for sharing this space with me. Until next time, keep choosing compassion, keep protecting your peace, and keep remembering that life doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. Talk soon.
Thanks for sharing your time with me here on Prescribing Possibility. I hope today's conversation offered you a breath of fresh air, a new perspective, or even just a moment of calm in the chaos of life. If this episode resonated with you, pass it along to a friend or a colleague. You never know who might need a little more harmony in their life today. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your questions, or topics you're curious about. Reach out to me anytime on Instagram or LinkedIn @dimtnawhile, or send me an email at podcast@dimtnawhile.com. Until next time, give yourself the grace to grow, the space to rest, and the courage to imagine what's next.